shocked with this one, Clay, because I would have bet my life. I would have bet my children's life that Boimler at the end of the pilot episode of this show learned that Mariner was Freeman's daughter. I could have swore that's what it was, so much that I was confused about whether or not it was tricking me. The episode was doing something to me, like whether or not it was playing with the audience, and I had to go to Memory Alpha and reread what had actually happened. I don't know if you had the same thing, or if not, if you actually remembered. I could have swore. I was shocked that I was so wrong about this, and I guess this is how they're going to build a two-parter to end a season, by sort of this being the storyline that they're going to resurrect from the pilot. But did you remember that, or were you confused?
I wasn't confused. I don't remember that being revealed in the first episode. Must
just be a matter of timing or something. Like the scenes must be right next to each other. I was shocked.
What scene are you thinking of in particular?
I guess I was confusing the fact that Boimler just learns in the pilot that he and Mariner can get along with each other on that away mission, and then he has a meeting with Freeman where he he doesn't sell out Mariner, and for some reason I was like, he doesn't sell her out because he realizes she's her daughter and she needs to impress her or something. I was way off, and it doesn't really amount to anything, but it was very confusing in this episode when so much of the ending hinged on that reveal.
Well, I actually thought it was I watched it twice, and my first watch through, I actually thought something different was happening than actually did. As far as that goes, but we can get into that in a little bit. But as far as the thing with her being the daughter is interesting, because I've always assumed that it was not something that everybody knew, but they haven't really played it as this like season spanning mystery that people are going to find out.
Yeah, Mariner's never had to conceal it from anybody. Really.
Right. Yeah.
Even to my credit, I don't think she conceals it in the pilot. It's just that the captain reveals it in a moment where she's talking to the admiral, who's her father, and they're just having a private conversation. It comes out, so it's not like there's any kind of secrecy whatsoever. So let's play a clip from the episode, which is Crisis Point, and then we'll come back and we'll break it down.
This report is a veritable fruit salad of insubordination.
I don't want to be here. I broke the rules. I'm supposed to be in the brig.
Sorry, captain's orders. She wants us to meet every week, cooking up some healthy strategies to marinate you into the officer she knows you can be.
I don't want your help. I want to show the captain that she's wrong and then get put in the brig.
Full stop, Beckett. We need to find an outlet for all that rage. Have you ever made paella?
Crisis Point is the 9th and penultimate episode of the first season of Star Trek Lower Decks. It came out on October 1st, 2020. Written by Ben Rogers, directed by Bob Suarez. In-universe date is unknown, but it's 2380. In this episode, Mariner repurposes Boimler's holodeck program to cast herself as the villain in a Lower Deck style movie. I intellectually liked this one more than I enjoyed watching it. I don't know how you felt about it, but I've spent this time, since I watched it this morning, I've spent today trying to come up with a reason why I didn't like it as much as I think I should, or whether or not I could talk myself into appreciating it for what I intellectually like about it. I'm kind of at the same point as I was when I stopped watching it, which is that I like it maybe slightly more just by thinking about it. But I don't know. It has a lot of things that sort of chafe me the wrong way in some ways too, even though I like the concept of it. So what did you think about it?
I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. Because I think the stuff that they did, that they were sending up was really fun. And the ways in which they did it was really fun, but I also really enjoyed the story. I think having Mariner have to face off with herself the way that they do was really clever. I just thought it was a really fun, well put together episode.
I think even though I understand intellectually the references are clever, more clever than just kind of shouting out references in a regular episode, it also felt like strangely artificial in some way. Like it is artificial, so I don't really know why I have a problem with this, but it feels like the way that they worked in a way to get a bunch of references in was clever, but at the same time I think I'm tired of the references in a strange way. Like I don't know. I don't know if at this point, the 9th episode in the series, it still feels to me like they're experimenting with what combination works across the board and how much they can get away with and something like that. And I think this one did a pretty good job. Maybe it's the best place to start is with the positive that I like about this one, just because I see a lot of chatter that gets in the way of the positive too. Mariner is a good character. There's a lot of conversation on our Discord and Twitter that people don't like Mariner. And while I can't say that your subjective take on whether or not you find the character as a person appealing or not, Mariner is Lower Decks. Like, Mariner is the character that in this episode has a split personality about what she wants to be, whether or not it's the goody two-shoes Starfleet officer or it's the person who's sort of cynical about the whole Star Trek thing. And that's what Lower Decks is. So Mariner personifies the show, and I think if you don't like Mariner, you probably don't like the show in general, because they're linked to each other. I don't think there's any way around that. Yeah.
I think they've done a great job in the last couple episodes of really stripping away that infallibility that I think everybody was afraid was going to be there from the beginning of the show, and really kind of started to settle into her actions and the way that she acts having a purpose other than just being, oh, she's the one that knows everything, she's the smartest one, et cetera, et cetera. Which, I think has turned her into a really good character for this show, especially for the reasons that you're talking about too. Yeah, because we talked in the past about how the show's trying to balance a love of Star Trek with comedy, which comedy has to make fun of something. Like comedy by its nature is making fun of something, and so if you're going to have a Star Trek show, it's going to make fun of Star Trek tropes. And there's this balancing act that the show has to do where it can't be too cynical about things, because the fandom will say this is not Star Trek because it's too hostile towards what we like. And it also, I don't think the creators feel that way either. And it also can't be not critical or cynical about Star Trek, because then it won't be funny. So it has to walk this line. And I did think that the Mariner storyline was really clever to split those characters into two and show you that that's at the core what the show is trying to do. I liked it. I think I do like it intellectually more than I actually enjoyed it, but I did think that Mariner is important, and I think disliking her, the more subjective things about she talks too fast or whatever, or is too crazed or anything like that, I can't really do anything other than subjectively say I don't agree with that, really. Like, I think that the criticism of her is kind of overblown, but she's the main character more than Brad Boimler is, even though it seems like Boimler should be the central character to it. Mariner is really the heart and soul of the show, and I think the performance has been improving. I think that the characterization has been improving for her. I think that the different situations they're putting her into are fine. I don't know if I'm going to be happy with this. Her secret is that she's the daughter of the captain is going to be good enough to really end a season on, but we'll see. So who knows? Yeah. I've been noticing that they've already started pushing Boimler to the background more, and focusing more on Mariner, because at the beginning of the season they were fairly, like you're saying, Boimler seems like he's more the main character and
straight man to all this situation.
Yeah, he's the Rick and Mariner's the Morty in this show, but they've
other way around, right? He's the Morty.
I'm sorry. Yes, he's the Morty and Mariner's the Rick. But as they've gone on, they've really started focusing on Mariner and even the other characters more than Boimler, because even though he was in the main story for like the first 2 or 3, the last handful have been Boimler's got a thing he's dealing with, which gets like 3 minutes in the episode and isn't really that entrenched in the rest of the story, whereas everybody else is sort of working on more interesting stories.
He's been triggering the things, right? Hasn't he? I feel like he's done that. The past couple. He's been like the inciting incident that causes the episode to happen.
Yeah. And I think ironically, I think if you want to come down on a character who is one note, it's not Mariner. I think it's Boimler.
Yeah.
He's kind of doing the same thing. The best part about him in this episode was what's his name? Shempo. the guy that the artificial Boimler that they create.
He was a huge pussy. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Mariner clearly has more complexities to her than Boimler does, at least at this point. And even Rutherford and Tendi, probably Rutherford more than Tendi at this point, have more interesting stuff to do in most of these episodes than Boimler does. He's sort of slinking to the back a little bit. Which, I don't think he has to be front and center every episode. That's the point of an ensemble, is you can it's not the Brad Boimler show featuring the crew of the Cerritos. It's lower decks.
Yeah.
So you gotta mix them and match them as you feel fit.
I'd agree they can flesh them out. It's another one of those things that I think we felt about other topics at the start of the season too, about like it needs to branch out from what it is. Kind of like the character pairings are too repetitive. The Boimler storylines, I think, are repetitive. He's just kind of the nervous Nelly character who, in his quest to please people, cascades all these problems to come off of him.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I don't mind him in that role. And I think that Mariner is actually, I think the voice actor for Mariner is actually more funny than the voice actor for Boimler, at least in the way that they've been given scripts with something to do about it. Boimler seems a little bit more traditional, and especially in episodes like this, I think Mariner stands out a little bit. Like her vocal performance is a little bit more spastic in a good way, I think, for a comedy show. Yeah. She's a little bit more energetic than Boimler, and that's a characterization thing as well, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, think about the stories that they've been given. Mariner has done a lot of different stuff. Rutherford and Tendi have done fairly a lot of different stuff. Boimler is essentially, he's trying really hard to impress the captain, and that's about it. Yeah. And it takes different forms, but that at the core is what he does every episode, essentially.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't surprise me that they're pushing to Mariner and some of the other characters a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how they continue. Even the episode that was about his girlfriend, he wasn't really in. Mm-hmm. He was just sort of like a background player for everybody else. But
yeah.
I'll be interested to see what happens moving forward with him.
Outside of that, I did like some of the jokes of this concept that the holodeck becomes a movie thing, which is to reference a lot of Star Trek tropes. They have the scene where it's just lens flares constantly, like every time the camera's just constantly panning and it's constantly lens flaring. They change the aspect ratio on things. There's blood.
They put a film grain on it.
Yeah, there's a grain on it. You can see the hair is occasionally floating across the screen. I liked all that stuff. I thought that was good. It's a lot of references that you can sort of jam into the thing, which is fine at that point. And I don't know why I wouldn't like the meta aspect of that. I think that has a lot of things that I would actually enjoy out of it.
Well, what I found the most amusing about the way that they did it is it is by far the most meta episode they've done up to this point, but ironically, they draw attention to it the least. Like, there's nobody calling out the jokes in this,
right? Like the flyby, the Enterprise flyby. That takes,
right? Yeah,
it's probably 30 seconds. Yeah.
I was watching it with my girlfriend, and I just kept chuckling at stuff, and she didn't. She was like, "What are you laughing at? What's the joke here?" I was like, "Oh, well, every in the first movie when they go to the ship, it's like a 5-minute sequence of them going around the ship and admiring." She's like, "Oh, okay."
The engineer is crying. The engineer is crying at the glory of the thing. He says he's flying.
I mean,
around.
even I have to say, it made me turn a corner on the theme song, because when they got to the movie section and they put the Jerry Goldsmith spin on the theme song, I was like, "This music is great. They should use this as the theme, but instead of that other thing." But like stuff like that, like just they tweaked the music. Like, nobody was drawing attention to any of that stuff except for the credit sequence, which they did draw a little bit of attention to. Most of the stuff they did that was referential was they just did it, and they just let it play.
Yeah.
Like they blew the ship up, which I thought was great, which is the hallmark of every Star Trek movie now.
Yep. Riffs a little bit on the Generations thing, because the saucer crashes onto the ground and rolls and stuff like that.
Right. Or even Star Trek Beyond. That's what more or less happens too.
Yeah, that's true. That one's even more rolls like a bicycle wheel, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
I did also really like, I can't remember the exact quote, but Mariner quotes something, and then Ransom goes, "Is she quoting The Tempest?"
Yeah.
just because it's, the bad guys always pull out an intense Shakespeare quote in these movies and whatnot. Yeah, I just thought it was a lot of fun. That aside, I really enjoyed the casual racism against Tendy's people.
Yeah,
the Orions. I thought that was funny.
They didn't emphasize it in an interesting way. They didn't play it up, unless I'm misremembering or something. I was expecting, especially in this era of like political commentary, I was expecting some sort of grand statement against that, but they don't really do that. The show kind of acknowledges that Orions, that is their function as a device in a Star Trek fictional show, is that the Orions are just kind of like a slave dancer people. So they handle it smartly, I think. And there was some subset that was upset that the picture on Memory Alpha had changed to a picture of Tendi for the Orion slave girls or whatever. But it's maybe kind of a strange thing whether or not I'm paying enough attention or they're not drawing attention to it at all. I didn't even kind of realize that she was an Orion. Tendi, like, she's green, obviously, and that's what the green people are, but it didn't strike me as something that I should recognize. Yeah,
it hasn't really come up that much in conversation on the show, I don't think.
No, just like that's why them trying to do the secret we were correct. One of us was correct when we mentioned we thought that they were going to end the season with it's sort of a two-parter where they hint at what's coming in this episode to imply into what ends in the next one. Sure. I guess there's been relatively little. It's a 10 episode comedy season. There's been relatively little character work in that sense because the one thing that we know about any character is now going to come back to be the linchpin of the series, and you don't know anything about Tendi. You don't really know anything about Rutherford at this point, but I don't know if the show needs to go there. It's just kind of an interesting lack of detail about the characters that you think you'd maybe expect to know at this point.
Well, I'm curious to see how they handle Mariner moving into next season, because this episode, if it seems like this season has been really about Mariner getting to the point that she gets to at the end of this episode, where she realizes why she's doing the things she does the way that she does them, and she has a bit of a revelation about it. I don't know if that's going to stick. We'll see. But I do kind of like this idea that you can, like, if you wanted to, you could do the same thing with any of the other characters next season. It's like, all right, this season we're going to focus in on Tendi. We're going to figure out what she's about, and she's going to be the running theme through these stories. I think that's it. I think that could be a fun way to handle it. My biggest question moving forward is this a status quo shift, or is this just a status quo reinforcement? Like, now we know why she does the things she does, so now she can just do them the way she always does them.
Right. Yeah, because to this point they haven't done any serialization, really. The only serialization you would say is that this Mariner subplot about being Freeman's daughter, which is not really a subplot. It's just kind of a line of dialogue that they've returned to at this point. So yeah, I found it kind of refreshing that there is no serial storyline to it. Like, that gives it a very older Star Trek feel to it. I'm not opposed to it, but it is curious whether or not it's just a joke that Mariner recognizes what she is, and now she can be free to be that person and not have to consider anything, or if it's a, as you say, like a status quo shift or a character growth, if you want to look at it that way, a character change or something. I'd imagine it would shift back to, this is just the way she is.
Yeah, I'm probably. I mean, we'll. I don't know, because this is a very smartly written show. I think there is room to do a little bit of both, because I think Rick and Morty does that really well, where they stick to their formula, but they've had enough shit happen over the 3 or 4 seasons that they've done that, like, some stuff sticks around and some characters have changed in certain emotional ways, and that stays.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. What I was talking about at the beginning about what I thought they were doing with the mother-daughter thing is, as they were going through the program, when Mariner as, what's her name? Veronica? No, that's the Glenn Danzig movie. I can't remember what the hell.
I will have to look it up. You
Vendetta, or I don't know, one of those.
Vindicta, right? Something
Vindicta,
like that.
Yes.
Vindicta.
As Vindicta, when she was fighting Freeman kept saying, "I have no idea who you are." She, which of course it's her daughter, and so she's like, that's the whole point. But I thought what they were doing was, since Boimler programmed the system, he didn't know that they were mother and daughter,
Mhm.
so there's no way he could have programmed that into the thing. But
Right.
then when second Mariner shows up and she's like, "Get your hands off my mom," obviously, clearly
That's
they
true.
know.
And
But-
it ends in that. It ends with her making the quote
Right.
about yeah. So
But
does she not
I-
recognize Vindicta as her daughter at that point?
I think that's the idea, that
Yeah.
Vindicta is.
Disguised.
No, I think it's just like, and when you're in a holodeck program, the character you're playing is not recognized.
Sure.
The character you're playing is the one that's being recognized, not the person playing it.
Of course. Right. How they
But
don't question like clothing or things. They just assume that this
Right.
person who's playing George Washington
Right,
is George
yeah.
Washington.
Yeah, when you walk into the Old West bar wearing your Starfleet uniform,
Yeah.
they just kind of go, "Ooh, them some fancy duds,"
Yeah.
But I realized what it was is that Boimler fashioned all these characters out of their personal logs, but that doesn't mean that he read them. So he just plugged everything in, and the program kind of did its thing and created them. That doesn't mean that he knew everything about these people. That's just the information that he pulled to create
Yeah.
the program. So
Yeah. I liked it as a holodeck episode too. That feels like a smart take on a holodeck, to dump everything that you know about people's personalities into a computer and then play it off like it's the real world. It's not like it's unheard of, but in things like Hollow Pursuits, where Barclay recreates the crew and it's revealed that this is like a huge social faux pas to replicate people that you know on the holodeck in the 21st century. That was treated as more of a he was being weird with them, like this is, I guess this is still weird, but this is like less weird. Although they make fun of it as Mariner is very open to, I think we had this discussion on the Hollow Pursuits with Sean, where Mariner is very into killing them in the holodeck,
Yes,
and because she recognizes that it's not real. And I think we had the same debate about whether or not you should feel bad if you kill someone on the holodeck, and the argument is just like, well, they're not really them. So I'm just kind of working through things on this. But I thought it was clever. They did something with the holodeck that they've never really done before, I don't think, which is to, I don't think there's probably 50 episodes in Voyager where they do it, but to treat the holodeck as a therapy session is interesting.
Yeah.
Hollow Pursuits is the opposite, where he was using it to amplify his
perviness.
Yeah, his sickness, I guess, if you want to go that way, like his sort of deficiency. This is the opposite, where she's using it indirectly to solve herself, because the therapist, who has a weird joke about making food references, can't get the job done.
Yeah, I think she goes into it intending to use it more like Barclay does, but she ultimately backs herself into therapy. Yeah. I really enjoyed the skeet shooting with Da Vinci. I thought that was fun. And
I like the button that closes it too. He shoots her.
I love the callback at the end, even though that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I really like that.
What does he say? Not today, or something. Not Da Vinci's day, or something like that. He shoots Spock getting out of the photon torpedo at the very end.
I had a question. I apologize if everybody's going to scream at me because I'm not remembering an episode where they did this. But have they ever done an episode across Star Trek where where someone has been trapped in a holodeck for like 50 years?
Not that I can think of, like in a program, like sitting in a program for a long time, or just stuck in the.
Yeah, like they get locked. I'm thinking. I just watched Inception recently, and so I was thinking of like, well, what if someone got stuck in the holodeck and they just get stuck in this program that's like glitching out or something? So they're living this entire life in the holodeck, and then ultimately they come out and are brought back into the real world and just have to, like they've been married or something and they had to kill people or something. And they've been in there so long they forgot that it's a computer program.
Right. No, I don't think they've ever done that. Interestingly, I guess you'd have to come around.
Surprised.
You certainly couldn't do it on a ship, because someone would go, "Why is the holodeck been locked for a week now?
Well,
like, what's going on?" Yeah.
Well, I was thinking like, okay, take any ship in the fleet. There's a guy in the holodeck, and then while he's in the holodeck, the ship gets attacked and the ship gets blown up and scuttled or whatever. But that section of the ship is still working, so he's stuck in there. And so maybe he's got to stay in there because if he comes out, then he'll get sucked into space or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I'm surprised that they've never done that. And so then eventually, the Enterprise or whoever shows up to get this guy out,
he's all Wolfman.
yeah. He's like a drug cartel leader. And then he gets pulled back in the 1950s or something, and then he gets pulled back into the 23rd century, and that would be kind of fun.
It's that what's that girl? There's always story. There's a famous documentary about it.
If I ever write a Star Trek comic, that's the story I'm going to do.
The easy way around it would just be, you wouldn't even have to be trapped in it. It's just they find someone who has isolated themselves on a planet and built a personal holodeck to sort of kind of get into their version of the Nexus. Almost, it's like a realistic version of their perfect universe, and they break him out and the difficulty he has of readapting to non-heaven. Basically, by coming back into the real world would be something interesting. They've never done that, I don't think. Not sure why. Random question to you: what the cat doctor after Rutherford and the chief officer have their connection? What F word did she call them?
I just assumed she said, "You two crazy fucks," but it could be anything.
It was, and is that the joke? I mean, I don't know. It's not. It's strange because they're having sort of this bonding session where they're hugging each other and going like, "Oh man, we're going to get our own ship or whatever," and she calls them "you crazy Fs." Yeah, and I don't know.
I guess the only other assumption you could make is the cat doctor is extremely homophobic or something.
she's clearly modeled after Pulaski, so you think that maybe they could play that up. But I was shocked that if even if it is a joke that they're playing up, I was just shocked by the audacity to do it. If it's not a joke that was intentional, I would have felt someone would have caught that and been like, this is kind of an inappropriate joke at this point. Let's make it more clear what we're saying. But it shocked me, but sometimes the show does shock me in strange ways. I don't have anything else really to say about this one. It's the 9th out of 10. Almost done with the season.
I did want to bring up, did you catch the weed joke? The technobabble weed joke?
No, I don't think so.
When Rutherford and I can't remember the engineer's name.
Billups or something? Is it something?
Billups.
Yeah.
When they go in and everything's blowing up or whatever, and they're trying to figure out how to fix it, Rutherford says he can bypass the INDA controls and suppress the SAT vents.
INDA control. Pretty clever. It's pretty good.
I thought it sounded weird the first time I watched it. Then when I went back and I watched it again, I was like, that is definitely a pot joke.
That's pretty good. I liked it's not even a joke. I just like Shrek's the security guard screaming, "When you get to hell, tell the power race the trucks."
Yes. With this giant, cable from the X-Men gun.
Yeah, he's got his chain gun and whatever. Yeah, that's
the one thing I did want to talk about. Did you enjoy the beginning where they fix the problem on the planet just by giving them food replicators? I feel like we've said that a billion times, where it's like, if you just give these people food replicators, it fixes all their problems.
Those people are a direct TNG reference where they had the lizard and the rat people, and the lizard people ate
one of the rats.
Really? Yeah, so it's in the first season of TNG. And they did sort of come to the same conclusion that we've come to after 700 episodes of Star Trek. It's like, why don't you just give them something to stop them from eating each other? Just have a replicator and call it a day and go about it. What do you guys enjoy doing? Like basking.
What's that?
He says he enjoys basking. I like that joke too for whatever reason.
And ultimately, the only thing that they needed the thing to replicate was protein pellets or something.
The rat pellets. Yeah.
But I did like that scene just because it was sort of a bit of a subversion of every Prime Directive story, where you have Mariner seemingly by herself solving a social injustice on this planet.
She's bringing freedom. She says she's bringing freedom to these people.
Bringing freedom to an entire population of people who are just being bred for food, kind of like the Kelpians a little bit.
Yeah.
And then ultimately she gets chided for it and scolded for it because she broke the Prime Directive.
Right.
Which is, kind of silly in the grand scheme of things. Especially when you can just solve the problem by giving them food replicators. But
yeah. I guess it's all kind of an act to that, because Freeman does that after she leaves. She's upset that she cost her report or whatever, and she gets Mariner out of there, and then she says, all right, guys, how about I just give you a replicator and we call this a day? Yeah, there is that. It's that, I don't know, how do you think the show at this point does a good job of poking fun at Star Trek? Is it incisive enough? Is it doing the correct take on these things? I think it has a balancing act, as I mentioned at the front. I think it is. I think I personally could go even harsher on it in some ways. Like I do kind of want the show to rip Star Trek a little bit more than it does. It does it lovingly at this point, and occasionally it has weird flashes of being darker, and I like those weird flashes, but I don't know if I'm the standard audience for this or what they're trying to do. I think they're doing a fairly effective job of balancing it at this point.
Yeah, I do too. I think they could go a little harder on it as well, but that might just be me, the Star Trek fan of me, outweighing the general someone who might be interested in the show fan of me.
Got to separate them a little bit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What's that? Oh, I was just gonna say,
it adds. I think when we're going through Enterprise, like one thing that we're recognizing is that if your series doesn't do something with it, it's kind of in a rough like it's basically just Star Trek at that point. And you're like, well, what the hell is the point of this? TNG kind of got away with it just because it was the first reboot, right? But you can't reboot the reboot into another reboot that's exactly the same as the first thing. So you, at that point, they had to do the DS9 thing. They had to do the Voyager setup. The series started to do things more specific to their sort of. It's not just a ship going planet to planet. There's a backbone to the story that they're going to try to rely on. I feel that Lower Decks. The reason you'd want to go harder as a Lower Decks comedy is that you want it to be the satirical Star Trek show. So it's not just a Star Trek show that's kind of funny on top of it. It's the one that makes fun of Star Trek. And I think that that's the reason, just by doing that, it differentiates the show a little bit beyond something like, oh, it's the animated show that's not the terrible animated show from the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, that's definitely what's going to give it an edge, is if they can push it a little harder into there. But I also, I could say my girlfriend really enjoys it, and she gets none of those jokes. So I point them out. So maybe they are striking the right tone. I don't know. But I would like to see them go a little bit harder on it. Yeah. But yeah, ultimately I think it's gotten consistently better through the season.
Yeah, I'd agree. The pilot, I was thinking, just because I was reading it today, the pilot almost seems quaint at this point. Like it's very traditional. It's just a sort of beam down to the planet, get into a hijinks while something else is going up on the ship. It seems very stock standard. And this one definitely feels more Rick and Morty Community humor, where it's taking that meta aspect and doing an episode of it, but also at the same time really getting into the crevices of the franchise, just because it's like going into something that you never see that side of things normally. So when you invert it and you're allowed to sort of like interrogate what's actually inside of it, it gives you something special, I think. And I think that's why, even if for whatever reason, if the episode didn't grab me, I think I'd prefer more episodes like this that do something kind of interesting with the idea, as opposed to just another riff on a straight Star Trek episode, which I don't mind every once in a while, but I'd prefer there were, at least a split between this kind of episode and then the sort of stock parody, if you want to call it a parody episode of a Star Trek episode.
Yeah. Like I said, I think for me anyway, I think the reference humor works better when they're not directly calling it out. Because I think if you had done that scene where they're flying around the ship and someone had made a crack about, wow, we've been flying around the ship for a long time, eh?
I was waiting for it. For it. Yeah.
Or if once they get onto the bridge, if someone's like, gee, why doesn't anybody turn some lights on in this, that kind of thing. I think that just gets like, yeah, you're patting yourself on the back for noticing stuff everybody notices.
Enterprise joke was tough. The Enterprise flyby was tough because I was like, if you really want to make this funny, this has to be like 5 uninterrupted minutes of them going
I think they found a nice middle ground by having everybody in the shuttlecraft like reacting emotionally to it.
They had 2 cutbacks to them, and it was cut in between the shuttle, so you could change their reactions, and it was almost like a montage because their reactions were more quick than the shuttle simply flying around it. So you got a sense of it going quick. But I wouldn't have been upset if it was just 5 minutes of the ship flying around it.
Yeah, I mean,
ballsy.
In a perfect world, that's the entire episode. Yeah, you know, that's the whole joke. Like, I mean, I think the more, if you really wanted to spin that ball, the entire episode is them doing a flyby of the ship, and then something happens inside the shuttle.
That's not a bad plot. Yeah, that's not a bad plot of that episode. Yeah.
And you know, as the tensions are growing, they all kind of stop every now and then to admire the ship as they fly by a certain part of it or whatever. But yeah, you know, I think they're figuring it out. I think my favorite non-referential joke was when Ransom shows up to fight Vindicta, and he says, you can talk the talk, let's see if you can walk the walk. And then he gets shot, and she goes, she did it, she's walking and talking, she's walking and talking.
Yeah, I like Ransom as a character too. I think he's fairly he's one of the better reference characters, I think, in a way. Like he sort of stands out in that regard. Shrax, or Shax, however you want to pronounce it. I guess it's Shax. You use a little work with him. Freeman, I think, is okay. The joke here with Freeman is kind of funny.
Yeah. I didn't even catch that one, but that's good.
I guess that's it. Well, let's just call it a day there. We'll play a clip from the episode. Actually, we don't do that on Lower Decks, do we? We'll just wrap it up here because we don't have any ratings or anything to go through. I'm happy. I was happy with this one. I'm not hitting the end of the season the way that I feel about Discovery and Picard seasons. I'm like, holy shit, 4 more episodes. Right. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It came by, went. It's
gonna
done.
Be a big come down in 2 weeks when we're back on the Discovery.
We don't do the best self-advertising for this, but I feel like I have to be honest about that stuff. But yeah, Discovery's coming.
Is that directly after? So it's like next week is the finale.
I hope we have a week
after is Discovery.
I hope we have a week. I hope we have a week at least, but it might not be that way. Discovery's coming. This one is good. I thought this was a clever episode. For whatever reason, didn't strike me in the heart in the way that the last 2 did. But I liked it. I thought it was clever. And season finale. I mean, I'm looking forward to it in the sense that it'll be nice to have a complete season under our belt for Lower Decks. But I've been happy with the show. I've been surprised by it. I've been sort of intrigued in the way that I think sometimes they're clever, sometimes that they achieve like the best of what they can do. That's pretty much it. But yeah, it was a good 9th episode. Do you have any final thoughts?
Not really. Yeah, I like this one a lot. I feel like it's going to be tough to, like, they really swung for the fence reference wise in this. I don't know if you could do another episode that is this heavy, and this overt. But you know, who knows? There's 10, 11 movies or so you can jump into to make references to, but somebody get me the MP3 of that Jerry Goldsmith remix of the theme.
What'd the teaser look like for our next episode? I think I watched it, but I don't really remember. Tendi has something she's doing in it.
Yeah, I forget exactly what it is. Is Boimler telling Mariner that he knows that she's Freeman's daughter, but I don't remember much outside of that.
I'm going to assume he doesn't get. Yeah, I'm going to assume he doesn't get discommendation or whatever Freeman says that she's going to do to people who learn that kind of thing. That's it. We're done with Lower Decks. That was Crisis Point. That was the episode, the name of their Lower Deck style movie. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed the content, you go to patreon.com/thepensky file and support us there. A couple $2 a month gets you extra stuff. You get extra podcasts, extra videos, extra commentary tracks, polls to talk about what we're going to vote. We have a Halloween special coming up. If you are a patron right before, we'll use Halloween as the cutoff. If you're a patron by Halloween, you'll get access to we're doing a Star Trek horror episode and then a horror movie, which is the Platform at this point. So I think it's one. So it's Platform, which is on Netflix. If you're a patron on Halloween,
the terrifying Platform.
Platform diving.
Don't go on to the platform.
You can't be a platform diver. You're scared of heights. It's a true horror. Yeah, so be a patron by Halloween. We'll say that as the date, and then you'll get those. And if you're not a patron, you won't have access to those. So it's a scary episode of Star Trek, which is Genesis, which is the TNG episode, Genesis.
Are you telling me that this platform is haunted?
It's a train platform. There's a lot of platforms that you can go into in this world. Other than that, I think that's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
We just had Rotten Horror Picture Show come out this past week where we covered John Carpenter's The Thing, which this is disease spreading and paranoia are at an all-time high, so perfect time to go back and revisit that movie. Next week we got a new Badass. Couldn't tell you what the episodes are. And we're pushing towards a Patreon goal to try and get some more Rotten Horror Picture Show content where Amanda and I will cover horror movie franchises that are not going to be on our list. So like the entirety of the Friday the 13th series and the rest of the Nightmare on Elm Street series instead, et cetera, et cetera. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to be a part of that, help us out on Patreon. That would be awesome.
All 17 platform movies, one after the other. That's it.
That would be a really fun for me as a thought exercise. Anthology series of every platform movie is a different kind of platform, like you were saying. So you've got like
a train platform is one,
and then platform 2 is a train station. Platform 3 is like a board game.
Just 70s disco platform shoes.
Yes, there you go. Exactly. Yes.
It would be good. We'd have to figure out a way. There'd have to be some kind of torture porn or something to sell it to the kids. But that would
platform 5 is every person who's murdered is repositioned into the shape of Oliver Platt.
Check it out on patreon.com/The Penske File. Otherwise, all the shows are at thepenskyfile.com and the YouTube channel. So blah, blah, blah. We're done with Lower Decks. Let us know what you thought about this episode, which is Crisis Point down below. And otherwise, we'll be back with Enterprise coverage and then Lower Decks and then hopefully a week off and then maybe right into Disco right after that. So
what if we watch the final episode of Lower Decks and it immediately went directly into the first episode of Discovery, so we had no choice but to watch it and then cover it instantly after we finished Lower Decks.
I'd have to cut the thumbnail in half, and I don't want to do that. So I don't want them to immediately. I don't think I'm ready for Discovery yet. I think I have to pump myself up a little bit. I have like grand designs because whenever we talk about Discovery on the show, we're both wrong about what happened in this.
That's true. Yeah.
So when you're in a tough spot when you're critical and cynical of a series, but you also can't remember what happened in the series.
Well, I feel like I'm getting the best out of this situation because they're jumping 1,000 years into the future, so it seems like a fresh start where very little is going to matter. But that's probably not how it's going to go at all. It's probably going to be very linked to the other stuff.
People. I think Kyle in the Discord is rewatching it now, so he's at least watching it with the mindset of the problems that we had for it, and he wants to prove us wrong, so he can prove us wrong in the Discord, and he'll find things about like that Spock tape and stuff. But yeah, I look back and I just don't remember, and I remember that they're going to the future, but I don't really remember why they got there. When we watched the trailer, we were both shocked to realize that the Red Angel suit is there too, like the Iron Man suit is going to be in the future.
Don't leave home without it. I assume that's how Georgiou was getting back for her Section 31 show.
Yeah, probably, right. Just pulls the ripcord on that one and just parachutes back 1,000 years into time. We're done. Thank you very much. See you later.